All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session of Stronger Together, focusing on businesses helping businesses in downtown Marietta. My name, for those who don't know, is Christy Thomas. I am the Executive Director of Marietta Main Street. And before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and just share a few notes. First, this session is being recorded and will be made available for review after the meeting. You may choose to keep your video on or off during the session, but I do ask that everyone mute their microphone before and after any questions. A presentation will be shown courtesy of our speaker, which we'll introduce in a second. Second, I do encourage those who are present to ask questions during the session. You can either raise your hand using the raise hand button on the bottom of your screen, or you can type a question into the chat box. Third, this program is put forward by Marietta Main Street thanks to the efforts of our Economic Vitality Committee. If you are interested in joining that committee or any of our other 7 committees, simply reach out and let me know. We're always looking for good folks to lend a hand. Now, for today's session, Why Merchandising Matters, Seeing is Buying, presented by Jesse Roush. Jesse Roush is the Executive Director of the Southeastern Ohio Port Authority. Jesse has a BA in Marketing with internship credits in merchandising with Broughton's. His store won the Sherwin-Williams District Award for Best Merchandising when he was an assistant manager. Additionally, during his year as assistant manager, his quick work and expertise cut inventory carrying costs by 3% at his store, which equated to over $10,000 in savings for a store that generated less than $1 million in annual sales. So we certainly are excited to welcome Jesse today. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video and mic and turn it over to you, Jesse.
Okay, thanks, Christy. So I'll jump to my first slide, and I thought this was important to set a stage for kind of my perspective. I think Christy and I talked about this a little bit when she brought up these topics for consideration and looking for speakers. What's the Port Authority guy doing talking about merchandising? Don't they have, boats to take care of? And while that's kind of a fair assumption, the early part of certainly most of my educational experience and the early part of my professional career, merchandise was a part of my everyday responsibilities. So as Christy said, I have a marketing degree from Ohio University. While I was there, I had the opportunity to do a very cool capstone course that involved working with Abercrombie & Fitch, which I'll talk about a little bit later. I got my internships from Broughton's, which is now Dean Foods and Prairie Farms here locally. And then I spent quite a while at Sherwin-Williams straight out of college, where we had a lot of success sort of turning around an older store. From my perspective, I'm naturally OCD and I'm a perfectionist. So I think there's a component of that makes for good merchandising. I think I particularly saw that kind of manifest itself at Sherwin-Williams and having full control over a store layout in some of our inventory management processes. In recent years with the transitions in my profession, I'm now more the consummate consumer. So I'm viewing merchandising through the lens of somebody who's actually spending money in the stores. And so I still pay attention to it, obviously based on my education and past experience. I might be a little more critical of what merchandising looks like than just the everyday consumer. There's a lot of creativity that goes into merchandising. I'm not very creative. I'm just a very practical person. So there's a component of that makes for good merchandising. One of the points that I want to make clear to this group that's participating in this lesson here, this topic, is that your particular store, your products, your markets, your customers better than anyone else. You're in there on the day-to-day. You have that sense. So really draw on what you know to be true about your products and your store, your customers, and then work with some of the data that might be available or some of the best practices that are out there and figure out, how can you adapt those to fit what you know to be true about what you're doing. I'm going to talk solely about just the physical in-store aspects of merchandising. There are other aspects, including digital merchandising, that have very similar principles, but a totally different application. I don't have a tremendous amount of experience in e-commerce, but again, I think you can take some from the principles of the physical merchandising that's going to take place in your stores and extrapolate that to your e-commerce platform if it's something that you're participating in. So at a very high level, what is merchandising? What are we going to learn in Merchandising 101? when in doubt, ask Google and see what Wikipedia has to tell you. And so this is just pulling straight from that. And I highlighted the things that I thought were important to talk about. Any practice, there is no silver bullet here. There is no one-stop cure for all of this merchandising. There are multiple ways to go about doing this in your stores or on your digital storefront. But ultimately what you're doing is you're trying to contribute to the sale of products by manipulating and setting the stage within your store, manipulating the way that the layout is, what products are available for sale at what time and for how much. That obviously correlates to a physical display of products that should be thoughtful so that you encourage customers to purchase from you, not only for the reasons that they came into the store, but maybe for reasons that they didn't know were important when they walked in the door. I think that, merchandising is very fluid. It's constantly changing based upon a variety of things, including, if you're heavy into the data analytics and you're looking at your numbers, or if you're in a business where seasonality is a particular focus for you and product lines are ever changing because of the seasons. There are special events like Main Street with the First Friday and other events that are going on that you should be giving thought to in terms of staging your storefront. If you know there's a particular theme or a particular special event going on, you can really curate your storefront to what you anticipate to be, true with those special events. You might have particular growth goals, which means that you want to add product lines or diversify product lines. Merchandising can help you do that. You have all of these objectives represented in that graphic from a visual standpoint, but each one of those, the bubbles on the outside are, buckets that you should be focusing on. How can you help with particular brand promotion? Well, a lot of times there are, co-promotion, cross-promotion, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Those activities can take place and help you increase brand recognition, whether it's for a product that you carry or it's your own brand that you're trying to develop and increase the awareness of. When I was at High University in the early 2000s, branding wasn't really what it is now. It's kind of became its own discipline. It has its own set of trappings and principles that go with it. It's not exactly marketing. It's not actually merchandising, but they're all kind of one and the same, and they do commingle with one another. So if anybody remembers a little giant ladder, you can see a picture there. The reason I stuck there, that this is the product that I saw in our Sherwin-Williams time to be sort of that seeing is buying. And when Christy and I were talking about what is the topic, what are we going to talk about, seeing is buying is a catchphrase that came up to me, and the little giant came back to my memory. We had in our store, we had a really nice storefront and a high vehicle traffic area. And so you can use those physical displays to increase the foot traffic in your store, which obviously is going to lead to increased sales. That little giant ladder was the antithesis of seeing is buying. When we launched that product, just setting a very simple ladder in the window of that store drove all kinds of traffic, and we sold far more ladders than we ever expected to sell. And some of that was encouraging those impulse buys. And we've all heard the FOMO, the fear of missing out. Well, you got this new cool ladder on there and it's limited supply. I gotta have that ladder. What is the product that's in your store that's that thing that people feel like, I gotta have that. That's the newest and the coolest. How can I visually promote that in my storefront? In doing my research for this presentation, one of the things that came up was what can be versus what is. So in our storefront, what they're saying is, if you just walk in and you've not taken any care or put any thought or foresight into the way that your store lays out, it's just kind of what it is. So if I fold that ladder up and stick it over in the corner, it's just kind of a ladder. But if I take that ladder out and show the customer what it can be, and I manipulate that ladder, and that's what we did. We changed the layout of that ladder. I think it has like 18 different functions, right? So we were constantly changing that. So if we had consistent traffic from whether they were DIY customers or they were professional customers, that ladder was always doing something different when they came into the store. So I'm painting this picture of, okay, this is not just your regular ladder. The same thing can be said with clothing, right? What can be is an outfit that you curate and stick in the window. You're pairing it with jewelry and shoes, and you're painting this picture of, okay, all of these pieces are what they are, and they're all in my store. but if you walk around and put them together, they come together, and this is what they can truly be. So there's a lot of power in painting a picture, and both of those kind of come into that seeing is buying, but also capitalizing on. Show them what can be. From a inventory management tool, this was my Sherwin-Williams experience, and this just depends on how you're procuring your inventory, whether you're on consignment with products or you're not. For me, in a store manager role, we were charged 1% for the total amount of the inventory on our books, and so that was a significant expense on our P&L and our balance sheet every year, and it was something that we were supposed to be mindful of. We had very wasteful ordering practices. And when I got there to that store, we had a surplus of products that either weren't a good fit for our store or our known market, or we had, maybe we did sell it, but we didn't sell that much of it, so we had a bunch of extra. I just started removing products from the back that I thought anything that I could transfer to another store, we got rid of it. But if it was something that we had to sell in our store, then what do you do with it? Well, you get it out of the back room and you move it up front, and you try to do that what can be scenario where, maybe we have a surplus of, in this instance, right, we had a surplus of deck stain. Let's pair that with an end cap display, and it's May, and that's the time that people are going to do this. Now's the time to move that product. Again, your store and your products, your customers better than anybody else. If you're bearing the weight of your total inventory in terms of a cost, a direct hit, or even if you're not assessing a 1% surcharge on your inventory, but you know that if you're going to have $10,000 of this particular product, you got to pay for that up front. So you're going to expend that money. You have to be consistent with your rotation of products, and that's both in the back room, in the storeroom, and on the floor. So merchandising can help you move products throughout the store, create that vision. And ultimately, that should help you, move those products that are costing you money, get them out of the store. From a new product line or a new brand exposure, this is where merchandising really shines. This is the opportunity to make a splash from a visual display standpoint, in caps or right in the front window, right? We're going to highlight what's new, what's different. One of the particular example for us was the release of the green frog tape that you've probably seen. That came out when we were in the stores. It was something new. It wasn't the traditional blue painter's tape. We were fortunate that we had this co-promotion aspect where frog tape provided us some really good end cap and merchandising materials that we were able to promote. But you're able to stage that with all the supplies that you would need to, paint your bedroom or paint your kitchen. And so that frog tape being, naturally as a product being green, right, it stuck out in the store. So you take advantage of that. You get it in an area where it's visible, it's high traffic. That's a great product, something small that's inexpensive to conduct the upsell and have it next to the register. But there's always products out there that, either are synergistic or there are other brands where there's a synergy between, a brand you sell and a brand somebody else carries, or maybe your personal brand and somebody else's. How can you create business relationships that are, allow for co-promotion, allow for cross-promotion? It's a win-win scenario where everybody has the opportunity. In my research, I was looking some of the co-promotion, cross-promotion examples where you have high-quality handcrafted leather boots that are being paired with a high-quality, locally sourced conditioner. What are those natural product pairings that you can shine a light to and paint that physical picture in your storefront? Or again, this is a good opportunity for e-commerce, because this is where some of the branding and the social media can come together to help you move products. From a brand reputation standpoint, I had to pull a movie quote. We actually watched this on YouTube today to make sure that we got it right, but no one wants to be a smelly kid, right? Nobody wants a terrible representation of your store. Nobody wants a bad reputation of, I go in there and it's dirty and it's funky, it's not stocked, they're not paying close attention. It's easy to allow things to get away. This seems like low-hanging fruit to me. It goes back to being, from an OCD standpoint, of being a perfectionist. Take care of the store. That conveys a lot to a customer in terms of cleanliness and just your general care for what you've created. When I walked into my first store at Sherwin-Williams, It was dark, dirty, dingy. Nobody was taking care of it. And just by changing light bulbs and, getting somebody in to take care of our floors, we made a remarkable difference in the perception of our store with our customer base with really just a little bit of elbow grease. Merchandising requires a little bit of elbow grease. So it doesn't matter how great the window display is. If folks walk into your store and it's just dirty and disheveled, then you've sort of taken away from what you created by painting that picture of what could be. On the next thing, these are just key items to think about and consider when you're rolling through your merchandising. Be fluid and dynamic. It's always changing. Again, back to the point about Christie's events and the seasons. What are other things that correlate with what you're selling? Do you have, is the Stern Wheel Festival this weekend? Are we expecting people from out of town to come in? How can we play to the demographic that we're serving for the Stern Wheel Festival or for the boat races or anything else that's going on in town? Be critical of what your storefront offers, what your products offer, and play to what you expect to see. From a the upsell standpoint, selling what they want, not what they need. Customers walk into your store, they're there for what they think they need. Well, you can really paint the picture of what it is they want. In this instance, you might have a similar product that's of a higher quality. Maybe you know it to be of a better quality and it's a higher margin for you. This is an opportunity to have that conversation, be very engaging with the customer and figure out how can I upsell right here and move to a higher quality product that may ultimately make my customer happier in the long run. And also it's a higher margin product so that we can get this out the door. Making things quick and easy. When you walk into the store and you know that you need to buy, back to my Sherwin-Williams example, I need to buy a gallon of paint. I don't want to have to walk all over the store to find things that go with that primary product. So if there's a primary product that's drawing customers into your store, how can you place things in and around your point of sale that are directly associated, that if a customer buys the primary product and then, goes away and doesn't have this ancillary product, they're going to have to come back later. And now they're frustrated they didn't get it all at one time. You know your products, again, better than anybody. What is it that you can pair with that primary product, make it right there at the point of sale, or make it, directly correlated with the primary product? Take all the work out of it for them. Know where to find it. Have that conversation and direct them towards, the upsell product that you want to move out the door. Curb appeal moves products. For me, this is all about process and prioritizing, taking care of the storefront, continually evolving products. It's easy to make yourself a schedule. We had a lot of things dictated to us from corporate in terms of what was the schedule of particular sales, and seemingly every quarter had a particular focus. But within that broad area of focus for that quarter, we had a lot of autonomy in how we staged our stores. So it may be that in May, again, we're going to Sherwin-Williams is going to heavily discount deck stain, but you as a store have an opportunity to then lay out those scenarios in your window and show them all the things that could be. What are the cool new products? Back to the little giant ladder. If you're painting a deck or you're painting your gutters, you need a ladder. And so how can you pair those products together? Have a process that you can start with in terms of knowing that you have point of sale, knowing that you have signage, knowing that you have inventory that you need to rotate, knowing what the schedule is throughout the course of the year. Make that a process, prioritize it. And if you do that, you should be continually evolving your storefront in a way that keeps it fluid and dynamic. From a data standpoint, Christy and I talked about this a little bit today in terms of, what's a feel for the total quality of the point of sale systems that are out there? Are people feeling like they need to invest in a quality point of sale device and the software to do the tracking? Big data is a huge part of retail, particularly in e-commerce. If you don't have a point of sale that's gathering data for you now, this is a great opportunity to make an investment in that. There are, grant programs out there that help businesses and adopt new technologies. It's something that you could look into. But it's important to know who your customers are, what they're buying. This gives you the opportunity to curate the shopping experience. Think about, Kroger's and tracking your points and being able to curate coupons. That's what they're doing. It's just a big data process. The same thing can happen on a small scale in a small business with an affordable point of sale device. Enhancing your customer services, again, this is easily done. If you're tracking the data and you know who your customers are, what they're buying, when they bought them, it's easy for you to handle returns. It's easy for you to manage inventory. In our case at Sherwin-Williams, just knowing what you bought was often critical because without a doubt, somebody lost the receipt. And if you could go back into the system and pull that data out, you can tell them that they bought, you know, this color on this day, and it makes it easy. It's an easy experience for them, and you're able to duplicate that purchase and get them what they want and get them out of the store. Lastly, streamlining your back office operations. If you have good data and you have a good point of sale system, it's going to make you a better inventory manager. It's going to make you better at doing your accounting. It's going to make you better at doing your ordering, and it's going to make ultimately the customer experience better. So there's a tremendous amount of value that comes from just the technology that's available today on point of sale and software, and moving that over towards the customer resource management software. It's something that I highly encourage, and I think that for a small business, particularly a small retailer that isn't tracking customer data, you got to start focusing there and figure out how can I do that. And there's a tremendous amount of resources out there. Myself, Christy, I'm sure we could help you go through that. The Small Business Development Center could advise on that. But of all the things that I would talk about today, if you don't have a quality point of sale device, I highly recommend getting one and figuring out how to use it and put it to work for you. So that's really all the highlights that I have to go through, and I will field any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Jesse. Does anyone have any questions for him while we're here together? All righty. Well, if anyone does happen to have any questions, feel free to reach out. Obviously, this series is based on businesses helping businesses downtown, so we know where everyone's located, just a block or two away. So Jesse is no stranger to Main Street. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to make himself available to address any questions after today, as would I. So I'll just share, thank you so much for joining us. Next month, we have Rockstar Wellness sharing tips on health and wellness for downtown small businesses. So I'm very excited to hear from Rachel and her team on that next month. All righty, well, we're going to sign off and hope each one of you have a great day.